Hello everyone. For this video I want to show you a technique to apply muted green tones to your images, and I will be doing this in Adobe Lightroom Classic. Before we start, please excuse my voice since I got a cold, and because of that I also want to get straight to the point, so let's begin with this tutorial. So what do I mean with muted greens? When I think of muted greens, I think of rather dark images with rather weak contrast, boosted blacks, and the most important part, a lot less saturation than the original raw image. This effect does look pretty cool, especially for forest images, or like in this case, images of those farm plants. And the cool thing here is it's easily achievable. I'm going to change the profile from Adobe Color to Adobe Standard, and you can see this will take out some saturation as well as some contrast. Next up, we do want to darken this image, so we can just bring down the exposure. Then to lessen the contrast even more and to give the blacks this faded look, we can simply raise the blacks here. Just a little bit, don't overdo it, and it already feels much better. Now at this point, if you want, you could boost the whites a little bit, just to give this image a little brightness back. But I think this looks pretty good. Now usually I would apply a dreamy look to my images, but for the muted greens look I think it's not that fitting. Instead I want to have a very clear image, so I'm starting by adding some texture. And I also want to introduce a little bit of clarity. Alright. And at this point we can start muting the greens by simply bringing down the vibrance. Alright, that looks awesome. I actually wanted to skip the local adjustments, but I think I need to do a tiny adjustment. Since I don't like the upper right corner here, I'm going to use a gradiated filter, just like that. And I want to bring down the exposure just a bit, so this part of the image isn't as prominent and the focus will be on this leaf in the center part. Alright, then let's continue adjusting the tone curve. This tool is very powerful. In this case, we want to fade the blacks a little more. The first thing I'm doing here is basically set a point in the very middle of this line. Then to add contrast, you can always just create a simple S-curve. That means you're going to create a point for the shadows, right about here, and then bring it down. As you can see, this adds some nice contrast. Now let's fade the blacks by simply bringing up the black point. Again, with this one you need to be careful, otherwise it does look strange real quick, but this looks good. Now let's also create a point for the brighter parts, right about here. Alright. Now when deactivating the tone curve, you can see that's a major difference right there. And it just feels a lot better. Now if you want, you could also play around with the green and blue channels, introducing a little more green to the shadows maybe, by bringing up the black point of the green curve. But that's totally up to you, it's not my taste, so I'm not doing this. Let's see what I can do with the yellow tones. I don't like that either, so let's continue in the HSL panel. Here, first I want to work on the hue a little bit, and mainly on the green hue. Here, depending on what you want, you can boost the green hue or you can drop it a little bit. And you can see dropping it will result in yellow greens, while increasing it will give those green tones a slight blue color cast. In this case, I think I want to increase it slightly, just to have some rich green tones in here. Then let's head over to the saturation. First off, I want to drop the orange tones. I also want to drop the yellow tones. And then of course the green tones, since we want a muted image. That looks pretty good. Let's see the before and after. Colors are much better, as well as the saturation, so that looks good. Then let's head to the color grading tab, and here I mainly want to affect the shadows. In this case that means I want to apply a cold color tone to them. And you can see this works really good with those muted green tones. So let's boost the hue a little more. Right now the saturation is way too much, so let's bring it down. That's a good spot right there. Alright, then there is a little bit of color grading left in the calibration tab, which is all the way down in Lightroom. And here it's always a good idea to just play around with those sliders. So I want to start with the green primary hue. And I think I want to increase the hue here. I don't want to have those yellow tones in them, so that means I need to increase them. Okay, now let's play around with the blue primary hue as well. And I think I want to drop them slightly. Okay, let's see the before and after. It's only really a tiny difference, but I like this version way more. Alright, now while we are down here, let's also add some vignetting. And this will help bring the focus on this leaf in the center. Just don't underexpose anything here. Alright, and finally let's sharpen this image. Just like that. And we are done. This is pretty general editing. That means there aren't really any local adjustments involved to make this image look better. Just this one gradiated filter, which is not that big of a deal. And this means this could be a pretty good preset. So if you don't know how to create a preset, right here in the left side menu, under the presets, you can click this little plus icon and just say create preset. And here you can choose all the settings you want to include in this preset. So we don't really need the gradiated filters, so let's deactivate them. And let's give this preset a name and hit create. And now under the user presets, you have now the muted green tones preset. So at this point we are done with this tutorial. I think this was helpful and interesting, and I hope my voice wasn't too annoying. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments, and thank you very much for watching this video.